Hola, ¿qué tal amigos? Bienvenido a un nuevo video en el canal. Hoy vamos a estar viendo lo que mostraron ayer a la prensa. Eso fue parte de algunos que jugaron un gameplay como de 3 horas según comentaron. Y la compañía Capcom les cedió 12 minutos de gameplay para que pudieran enseñarlos. Entonces vamos a estar reaccionando a lo que hemos visto hasta ahora y vamos a ver un resumen también en la página. Ya que se estrena el 27 de febrero y justamente hoy a la fecha en que grabo, pues estamos solamente a un mes para ver lo que nos espera. Tiene muy buena pinta. Ya imagino que todos han visto de qué se trata, las mecánicas. La semana pasada en el showcase de Resident Evil, en el Resident Evil Showcase, estuvimos viendo diferentes mecánicas. Pero primero vamos a reaccionar a lo que fue el gameplay de ayer que mostraron para ir comentando de a poco a ver qué cosas nuevas vemos.
With the triumphant return of Leon Kennedy, Resident Evil Requiem is forced to straddle an awkward line between all-out action and methodical survival horror. I'll be honest, before getting my
Esto es parte de lo nuevo mostrado. Ese jefe no lo habíamos visto hasta ahora, pero ya eso es parte de lo que le enseñaron ayer en el gameplay a la prensa. Bueno, no le enseñaron, muchos de ellos tuvieron la oportunidad de jugarlo, pero no sé si esto es parte de la misma jugabilidad de ellos o es algo que específicamente Capcom le dio a ellos para especificar lo que sí pueden mostrar.
hands on the game and seeing the transition in action, I was extremely skeptical that Capcom would be able to create a coherent experience
Feo.
involving both Leon and Grace, the latest highly vulnerable protagonist.
Grace, la más vulnerable, claro. Si Leon parece John Wick.
Hey, over here.
The switching between their polar opposite styles sounds jarring, which is almost never a good thing. And although it's been a while, it's not like we haven't been burned by Capcom's desire to push the series towards action before. But I'm pleased to share that, from my all too brief 3 hours of hands-on time with Resident Evil Requiem, not only does this design really work, but there's also a lot more going on than just a merging of Resident Evil's greatest hits.
That's too effective.
My playtime started with a short test drive of Leon, and Resident Evil 4 muscle memory kicked in immediately. Make no mistake, this plays just like
Emblemática
the recent
motosierra.
remake, enhanced with some new clever additions suitable
Ahora
for
yo
a
me
veteran balance.
pregunto, no sé si se han preguntado, yo me pregunto, ¿qué hace un doctor con una sierra? ¿Qué hace una motosierra en un hospital? O no sé si es un hospital, más parece como un psiquiátrico, no sé bien.
Leon is more handy than ever, with a deadly hatchet that he can swing mercilessly added to his regular arsenal.
No perdona el Leon.
Leon can also heave axes found in the world, can perform new contextual finishing moves, and finally wield the violent chainsaw.
Habrá mucho
It was
gore.
once a time when Leon feared the chainsaw, but now Leon has become Chainsaw, destroyer of ghouls.
Esta gata salió ahí, ¿verdad? La gata.
After a short 15 minutes,
Así
the
mismo va a
gameplay
salir en el
shifted
video.
perspective to Grace Ashcroft, Requiem's second protagonist, picking up her journey immediately after the events of the previous demo I wrote about in August last year. Grace and Leon are polar opposites, gone with the tense gunfights and forward momentum of Resident Evil 4, as I was immediately thrust into what felt like a sterile, white, clean version of Resident Evil 7. For the next 2 hours, I explored the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center, a somewhat traditional Resident Evil mansion that contains much of what you might expect among its rooms and corridors, but with plenty of new surprises.
Lo que podemos ver es que con Grace realmente es como la parte más vulnerable. Es como para uno jugar con sigilo con ella, como en el Resident Evil 7, en el Biohazard. Que realmente nos sentíamos como indefensos. Teníamos que estar escabulléndonos, escondiéndonos. Con Leon no, con Leon uno va a saco, directo, porque uno sabe que uno tiene cómo defenderse. Que el hacha, que la pistola, que ahora da más patada que Bruce Lee. Entonces, con Grace, un cuchillito ahí viejo, que le sirve para defenderse, pero a la vez que estemos jugando nos sentiremos indefenso, un poco indefenso con ella.
Surprises that mostly arise thanks to Grace's abilities, or rather, lack thereof. Much like in the previous demo, Grace's section was focused almost exclusively on survival horror. She is armed with a small pistol that she finds in the environment, but her firepower and combat skills are negligible compared to our favourite floppy-haired icon. Where Leon can roundhouse kick zombies in the face, Grace makes do with a clumsy push. Leon is all out assault, but the best course of action for Grace is slow and deliberate stealth. Because if you do try to take some of the new enemies head on, you're gonna have a bad time.
Bueno.
Last year's demo revealed a new and much celebrated stalker enemy, a towering, hunched, bug-eyed warden. But even within the span of my short 3-hour session, I was introduced to another two, giving me the impression that Resident Evil Requiem won't have one Mr. X or Nemesis-like persistent threat, but rather several smaller pursuers that seem to guard certain wings of the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Centre. Most notable was a hulking mass of blubber called Chunk, who burst through the wall and into my heart as he slowly but surely ground his way through the halls, stairwells and doorways in
Ese no
pursuit
creo
of
que
me.
se mate a
Uniquely,
tiro, se
Chunk
habrá que
fills
huir.
the space
Y más si es
entirely,
Grace
so
que
your only
está
chance of survival is to
combatiéndolo.
find and navigate loops built into the level design in order to outmaneuver the walking lardass. It's a clever design that generates a somewhat living, breathing wall of terror, and one you can't simply sidestep or combat roll away from.
Pero le sale por todos lados.
Much like the stalker I escaped last year, Chunk is cleverly implemented into the context of traditional safe rooms. Where the room's bright light caused the previous stalker pain, Chunk simply can't physically squeeze his sheer mass through the door, making sure that there's a logical in-world justification for a room of respite. As well as Chunk, I also ran into a 7-foot-tall hulking unit masquerading as a chef, who, until he noticed me, was completely focused on his chopping chores. This soon-to-be stalker wasn't yet in searching mode. Rather, he was fulfilling, I assume, his pre-infection duties. And this kind of behavior isn't unique to the chef. It turns out in Resident Evil Requiem, the traditional zombie fodder is just as much a star of the show. You see, zombies not only talk now...
Esa alma se ve que es poderosa. ¿Vieron cómo ella cuando disparó, como que le dolió, le molestó en la mano?
Zombie fodder is just as much a star of the show.
Le
You see,
dolió,
zombies
potente.
not only talk now, but also have their own personalities. The undead are no longer unfortunate generic lost souls, but rather husks that retain a smidge of living personalities, hanging out in the space that they once occupied. There's the lounge singing shrieker in the bar area, who, before being alerted, entertains herself by belting out a ditty. There are the zombies who were formerly patients in recovery that insist on wheeling around their drip stands, which are then, unsurprisingly, wielded as a weapon when they get aggroed. Some zombies hate loud noises and will repeatedly yell at you if you even so much as smash a vase. And then there's the one that loves nothing more than turning lights on and off until you rudely interrupt him. If it's not clear by now, Resident Evil Requiem, aside from being packed with action and fear, is also now funny, something that the series has never, at least intentionally, achieved before. As Grace creeps around the hospital, there's the continual threat that around every corner awaits horror, or laughter, or sometimes even both. When you can hear the undead nattering away in a room you know you have to enter to achieve your next objective, it's hard to know whether to be scared or have a good chuckle. On paper, this sounds like it could be awful. I'm aware of that. But honestly, it's so good. I laughed so hard when I caught one particular dopey zombie red-handed, both literally and figuratively, lifting a large and importantly red canister to
Parece
throw
que
me
estaba en
away.
una
I'm
boda
sure you can
casándose.
imagine what happened next. The zombie fodder isn't just around to entertain and quickly be disposed of though. As Grace, the undead are a significant threat, always moving a little faster than you anticipate. Their fallen corpses also pose a significant conundrum, as they have the ability to turn into blister heads, a reinvention of Resident Evil Remake's Crimson Heads for a new generation, that reanimate with a bulbous cranium and become significantly tougher to take down. Fortunately, Grace has a new tool at her disposal. A hemolytic injector that weaponizes the buckets of blood lying around the
Semana
place.
pasada vimos que eso que ella hizo ahí puede servir para tanto para tú curarte o inyectárselo como a los otros zombies, lo hace como explotar.
Seriously, it's everywhere. creating a lethal injection that can be used as a preventative measure against blister heads when injecting a fallen enemy, and as a stealth attack against anything that's still moving. Beyond the new enemy types, playing as Grace does feel familiar if you've played either Resident Evil 7 or Resident Evil 2, although obviously it leans more towards the latter if you choose to play as Grace in third person. You're exploring a huge mansion with locked doors, there are obtuse puzzles to solve, antique coins to find that can upgrade your equipment, Mr. Raccoons to shoot, safe rooms with a typewriter for saving and a storage box for inventory management, and so forth. Leon, however, can brute force open certain doors that Grace can't, and is far more aggressive with combat compared to Grace's methodical stealth. You can also choose to play as Leon in first person, though after a brief dabble, it felt very unnatural to do so. I can't help but think Capcom built the game with Leon in third person and Grace in first person in mind, but it's hard to complain about more choice, despite knowing deep down the development team surely had a preference. My demo ended with a second all too short stint as Leon, which allowed me to revisit sections of the care center I'd previously experienced with Grace. Interestingly, this section demonstrated perhaps my favorite element of this hybrid experience. Leon is also exposed to some of the tougher combat encounters that I'd suffered through as Grace, although the perspective, much like my viewpoint of choice, is very different. When I met Chunk as Grace, I immediately retreated and was forced into a game of cat and mouse. The threat is intimidating and encourages you to tread lightly. As Leon, however, emboldened by my newly acquired shotgun, I felt instantly trigger happy, unloading shells right up into Chunk's face and launching hatchet attacks on his head as part of a fight that felt somewhat reminiscent of the El Gigante encounters in Resident Evil 4. To Grace, Chunk and his fellow creeps are stalkers. To Leon, they're targets. This ethos was reaffirmed when taking on a wave of blister heads with Leon at the end of my playtime. With Grace, I waited patiently for a stealth attack opportunity. With Leon, I was hurling hand grenades and throwing axes for fun. This year is the 30th anniversary of the Resident Evil series, so it feels like no coincidence that 2026's Resident Evil Requiem is combining the best ideas of the saga into what appears to be a fantastically constructed tribute to everything.
Disculpen la interrupción, que hubo inconveniente con uno de los gatos, ahí se subió. Seguimos.
That makes the series so great. Do you like tense survival horror? It's here. Want to go all guns blazing with intense action and a quip-obsessed hero? You get to do that too. Do you prefer playing Resident Evil games in first or third person? Doesn't matter, you can do either. All of these choices, along with my fears of a jarring play experience being mostly squashed, make it easy to believe that Capcom's bold move to have its cake and eat it is going to pay off in a big way. If you like that video and want to find out more about Resident Evil Requiem, why not check out my previous preview where I discuss another stalker enemy in great detail. And for everything else, be sure to stick with IGN.
Eso es parte de lo que estuvieron enseñando ayer. Y aquí está lo otro que yo quería mostrarles. Es lo que ellos han ido mostrando desde el año pasado, poco a poco. El 19 de junio del año pasado fue cuando pudimos ver un poquito, spotlight de lo que iba a ser. El 27 del mismo mes de junio ya publicaron entrevistas con el equipo de desarrollo. El 13 de septiembre anunciaron que saldría para la Switch 2. El 30 de octubre presentaron el amiibo de Grace Anscroft. Vamos a ver qué dice esto, porque yo no recuerdo mucho. Aunque no me deja cliquear ahí, parece que ya la quitaron eso, pero no recuerdo realmente bien. Aquí el 12 de diciembre presentaron una colaboración con el fabricante de automóvil, el Porsche, que vimos que Leon, el vehículo que Leon estará utilizando cuando llega al lugar ahí donde se va a desarrollar el juego. Y esto fue el 13 de ahora de enero, fue el showcase. Ahí sí vimos cosas interesantes que no sabíamos. Títulos relacionados. El director le estuvo comentando de que él nunca dijo que Leon no iba a estar. Él solamente no lo dijo, pero no dijo que no iba a estar. Lo ocultó, pero ya pudimos ver que sí, obviamente sí iba a estar. Lo otro es esto, una colaboración como con Hamilton, la marca de reloj. Está muy, muy bonito, cierto. Negro me gusta. Son edición limitada. Entonces, han sido los trailers ya que han ido saliendo de a poco. Este fue el primer trailer creo que vimos. Ah, no, este para la Switch. Este fue el primero. Y nada, amigos, ya está a la vuelta de la esquina. Falta solamente un mes para poder disfrutar de esta obra maestra que se ve que lo será. Capcom, tú sabes que Capcom no falla. Los Resident Evil. A excepción de muy pocos, pero realmente de ellos podemos esperar algo bueno y bien optimizado. Porque su motor gráfico realmente para este tipo de juegos está muy bien. Ya sabemos que, por ejemplo, ellos utilizaron este para, creo que fue para el de Dragon, me va el nombre, el juego este, Dragon Dogma 2. Y sabemos que no tuvo, no sé ahora cómo está actualmente, pero no tuvo muy buena optimización, ya que eso es un mundo abierto. Los Resident Evil son pasilleros, como se dice. Tienen su área un poco abierta, pero no es lo mismo a un mundo abierto. Entonces, aquí está Grace, Leon, la madre de Grace, Lisa, que de una forma u otra ella está y Leon están conectados, sabe cómo, pero ya por suerte eso está ahí mismo. Vamos a poder disfrutar de todo esto. El combate va a ser interesantísimo. Con ella vamos a estar como la pasamos en el 7 asustado. Y nada, amigos, ya eso es todo. Aquí pueden hacer su reserva. No sé si ya ustedes lo adquirieron. Quienes van a esperar que salgan reseñas para entonces jugarlo. Otros lo estaremos jugando del día 1. Y así. Pero nada, esto, quería mostrarles esto ya como para culminar. Porque creo que ya no van a enseñar más nada. Ya lo que queda un mes y han enseñado demasiado realmente. Entonces ya lo que pueden hacer es dejarnos suspenso ya. Para que todo lo que venga sea ya de sorpresa. Así que gracias amigos por ver este video una vez más. Ya saben, suscríbanse, compartan el video. Yo traeré este tipo de videos. Quiero también implementar otros tipos de videos. Pero estoy comenzando. Hice el otro que fue de acerca de Fable, del showcase, del Developer Direct, perdón, de Fable. Pero estaré haciendo este tipo de videos. Realmente me siento cómodo haciéndolo. Y nada, gracias amigos. Nos vemos en la próxima.